Welcome to another chilling tale from our Ghost Stories series. Take a deep breath, settle your nerves, and dim the lights, because this story will send shivers down your spine. This is The Forgotten Bells, Resonance of the Undead. Are you ready to uncover the haunting truth? Let's begin. Nestled deep in an isolated valley lies a small, abandoned chapel. This isn't just any chapel. Locals warn travelers to stay away, murmuring tales of eerie happenings they cannot explain. Its bell tower rises high into the mist, but the bells haven't rung for decades, or so they say. But is that really true? The tale begins on a cold November evening as a brave wanderer, Sylvia, ventured into the valley during her photography expedition. She had heard the stories, but dismissed them as nothing more than folklore. Sylvia was a skeptic after all, someone who loved debunking myths and finding the scientific truths behind supernatural claims. Armed with her camera and a flashlight, Sylvia intended to capture what she thought would be a quaint, forgotten piece of history in photographs. As dusk fell, Sylvia found herself face to face with the chapel. Standing there, it exuded an aura of desolation and sadness. The vines crept up its walls as though trying to erase its existence. Its wooden doors were nearly falling apart, and the silence around it was unnerving. Not a single bird chirped above. The air didn't even carry the usual sound of leaves rustling. Still, Sylvia, intrigued, chose to enter. The moment she stepped inside, a strange sensation washed over her, as if the air itself was heavier, thicker. She dismissed her unease and began clicking photos. The interior was a snapshot from a bygone era: peeling paint, overturned pews, and shattered stained glass, spilling faint light onto the stone floor. What stood out the most, however, was the grand staircase leading to the bell tower. A peculiar inscription above the stairs caught her attention. It read, "When the forgotten bells toll, the boundary between life and death will shatter." Sylvia chuckled at the dramatic wording. She whispered to herself, "Sounds like something straight out of a Halloween special," and kept clicking her camera. As she began reviewing her photos, an icy chill engulfed the room. Her breath misted in the air, even though it hadn't felt that cold prior. Then she heard it, a faint, melodic toll of a bell echoing through the chapel. Startled, she looked up. Could it be the wind playing tricks on her? Shrugging it off, she moved toward the staircase, curiosity pushing her forward. Step by creaking step, the sound of another bell toll became slightly louder. Yet, the bells shouldn't be working anymore. Logically, they couldn't be. Something was off, but Sylvia couldn't turn back. She reached the door to the bell tower, hesitant but determined. Pushing the door open, Sylvia was greeted by a suffocating darkness. Her flashlight flickered erratically, casting distorted shadows of the rusted bell high above. The bell rope swung lightly, though there was no breeze, or was there? As the flashlight stabilized, she noticed something peculiar. Etched around the base of the bell tower was a circle of symbols she couldn't recognize. They pulsed faintly, as though alive. The third toll of the bell rang loudly this time, and Sylvia instinctively gripped her camera. She trained her lens on the bell, hoping to record the inexplicable movements. As she adjusted the focus, her peripheral vision caught movement. Slowly, she turned. At first, there was nothing but empty darkness, but then, fleeting glimpses of figures began to appear. They moved in jerky, disjointed movements, as if struggling against an invisible current. Their formless, hollowed eyes fixated on her, glowing with a spectral light. The air became frigid, so much that Sylvia began to feel her clothing stiffen from frost. Yet she stood still, rooted by a gripping combination of fear and wonder. One of the figures moved closer, whispering words she couldn't understand. Its voice was like wind slicing through the frozen air. Then came the fourth toll, reverberating through her very bones. The figures began closing in, their desperation palpable. Suddenly, the symbols on the floor around the bell ignited, casting the room into a ghostly glow. A surge of wind surrounded Sylvia, carrying with it incoherent voices, sobbing and pleading. These were no ordinary spirits. They were trapped souls, bound to the bell tolls, a mechanism no doubt tied to the cryptic warnings she'd read earlier. Sylvia tried to back away, but found herself unable to move as a translucent, gaunt hand reached toward her. Her camera slipped from her grasp and clattered to the floor. Somehow, amidst the chaos, she managed to grasp one clear thought. She had to stop the bells from tolling. She turned toward the ropes, now thrashing wildly on their own. Sylvia reached out, forced by desperate self-preservation, and tried to halt the swinging mechanism by gripping one of the ropes. She felt an intense electrical surge zap through her body, a sensation not entirely painful, but deeply unsettling. The spirits screamed in unison, a sound so piercing that she thought the walls would collapse. Despite their pleas, she persisted and pulled with all her might, yanking the rope in an attempt to derail the bell from striking again. The fifth toll threatened to begin, but stopped mid-resonance, letting out an eerie, trembling vibration. The moment was brief. In a heartbeat, the chapel fell silent. The whispering, the sobbing, the spectral forms, all vanished. The only sound remaining was Sylvia's heavy, panicked breathing. She collapsed to the floor, trembling but somehow unscathed. Slowly, she collected her camera and flashlight, and not daring to glance behind her, descended the staircase hurriedly. Her footsteps echoed in the now oppressive silence. When she emerged into the night, the valley felt different. The almost paralyzing stillness had lightened, and the air carried a faint warmth, as if some heavy, dark presence had been lifted. Exhausted and shaken beyond words, Sylvia returned to her car and left the valley that very night. Days later, as Sylvia reviewed the photos from her visit, something stopped her dead in her tracks. Every picture she had taken inside the chapel, especially near the bell tower, captured faint but undeniable ghostly outlines. Most shocking of all was one photograph, a clear image of the inscription above the staircase. But in this photo, the words had changed. Instead of the cryptic warning she originally saw, it now read, "Thank you for silencing the forgotten bells." Sylvia never returned to that valley, and the chapel became a subject of countless debates and online forums. Some hailed her as a hero who vanquished tormented souls, while others warned that the bell's silence might only be temporary, waiting for the next unfortunate soul to stumble upon the chapel and awaken its dark presence. So, if you ever find yourself trekking into unknown territory and stumble across a forgotten chapel, do yourself a favor. Keep walking. Remember, not all sounds are meant to be heard, and some stories should remain forgotten. This was The Forgotten Bells, Resonance of the Undead. Stay tuned for our next tale of terror in the Ghost Stories series. I hope you'll join us again, if you dare. Until then, sleep well, or at least try to.